After his encounter, a story by Evie's heart. Fred had just left the club at 1 a.m. He looked at his watch, it was 1 a.m. There's still time, he murmured and entered his car, looking around for a girl to take to the hotel. His phone started ringing for the 10th time. He looked at it and kept it aside. Why is this woman disturbing my life this much? Can't I have a fun weekend again? Am I the first man to get married? Fred continued talking to himself angrily. Then he sighted her, coming towards him, her skin glittering under the moonlight like a goddess. She was dressed in a beautiful red gown, and her hair was so long and thick. Fred jumped out of his car and smiled. "Hi, beautiful," he said, stretching his hand to touch her skin. But she moved back, smiling. "This is your first time here, right? I have always visited this club every weekend with my friends and sometimes alone, and I have never seen someone this gorgeous." "What is your name?" Fred asked, still smiling. "My name is Shulamite, but you can call me Shula," the lady said, smiling. "How much do you charge for a night?" Fred asked, holding her hand. But instead of answering Fred, she told him to follow her. Fred quickly ran after her. Immediately he followed her, he forgot himself. He could feel himself moving, but not to where he was expecting her to go. She took him across the road and entered the bush there. They walked for about 2 hours and arrived at a river. Fred wanted to say no and return to his car, but it was as if his mind was no longer his own. "Remove your clothes and lie down there," Shula commanded. Fred quickly did as he was told. Shula turned into something Fred could not describe. It looked like a beast with a human body, a tongue so long and black, long nails, and a hairy body. It held Fred down beside the water and made out with him. Fred slept off and woke up the next day, naked. He cried and started running, but he didn't even know where he was running to. "I thought I was dreaming," he shouted when he saw his clothes along the bushy path, littered on the ground. He quickly dressed up and continued running. By the time he could find his way out of the bush and get back to the club where he had left his car, it was almost night. He always kept extra clothes inside his car in case of emergency, so he changed and took his phone to check the time. 6 p.m. He managed to check his call log and saw almost 40 missed calls before his phone's battery went dead. He drove straight home, angry. His pregnant wife, who had called all his friends, was crying on the phone to their pastor when he walked in. Everyone had told her to calm down, that it was not yet too late, he wasn't a missing person yet. Fred walked in, shouting at his wife for chasing him out of the house with her constant nagging. He entered the bathroom, happy that he had one again. His wife was already at the bathroom door, pleading and asking him for forgiveness. "You don't have to sleep outside because of me again. I will never disturb your movement," Onome, his wife, pleaded. Fred decided to stay at home that night because he was still terrified about what had happened to him earlier. He was in the bathroom, taking his shower, when he felt a strong movement inside his stomach. He rushed to the mirror and saw his stomach growing big. He shouted out of fear and fell on the bathroom floor, watching his stomach grow like a woman pregnant with twins. His wife was just welcoming their pastor and other church members when they all heard him shout. They all ran to the bathroom, knocking for Fred to open the door. Fred was sitting on the bathroom floor with a long, swollen stomach, hairy legs, and horns on his head. After knocking for some minutes, with no response but groans and painful shouts from Fred, Onome told their church members to open the door and help my husband. "I think he is in danger," Onome shouted, looking scared. Just then, Fred felt something huge coming out of his mouth. He opened his mouth, and a huge python started crawling out. It came out and crawled inside the toilet, to the horror of Fred, who was still sitting on the floor watching. He watched his body change again to his normal self. So, before they could break the door, he had tied his towel and opened the door. He managed to smile at their pastor. "I fell down accidentally, that was why I shouted in pain," Fred lied and walked into their room. Everyone became relieved, including his wife, Onome. But their pastor, Pastor Chucks, knew something was wrong. He could feel something following Fred around. He could not place his hands on what it was, but he could feel it. So, he called Onome aside and advised her to keep an eye on Fred. They all went to their sitting room, waiting for Fred to join them and pray, but Fred went into his room and slept off. His wife did not wake him up again. She bid their visitors good night and slept in another room. Fred started dreaming again at night. He found himself changing into the beast he had seen by the riverside. In the dream, he could run very fast, fly, and even climb the tallest trees. He saw himself walking into their church. He could feel the anger and power that was pushing him, but he could not control it. The next thing was, he saw himself as a beast, standing before his pastor, who was inside his office reading the Word of God. He roared at Pastor Chucks. "I knew you would come," Pastor Chucks said to the beast. But before he could raise his hands and call on God, the beast tore him apart and flung him against the wall. The beast wanted to finish him off when he shouted. He felt something burning his skin and started screaming. People who were in the church for night prayers started running towards the pastor's office. The beast quickly changed into Fred, and a big python crawled out of his mouth, ran into the pastor's toilet, and disappeared. By the time the church members got there, Fred had crawled up into the ceiling manhole and hid himself there, panting. They saw Pastor Chucks on the ground, almost lifeless. They rushed him to the hospital, while some of them stayed back and called the police. From the scratch and bite marks, it was obvious he was attacked by something very wild and dangerous, the church members told the police. The police officer searched the whole office and the entire church but found nothing. They told the church security to keep an eye on the church compound and report anything odd or any new face they see. Meanwhile, Fred had moved from the position he was in inside the ceiling to another place. When he got to the church's changing room, filled with clothes that could fit him, he saw the clothes and thought, "Let me find cloth first and put on, then I can pretend that I was in the church." But when he jumped into the changing room, he saw the married choir master, pants down, with another married church member. They both stood shocked, looking at Fred, who was naked and covered in blood. Immediately they noticed the blood. They realized Fred might be the one who attacked Pastor Chucks and fell on their knees. "Please, don't harm us," they both begged Fred. Fred asked them to show him where new clothes were kept. When they did, he dressed up and was about to sneak out of the door when the beast overtook him. The beast rushed at the choir master and his lover and tore them apart. When the choir master and his lover had died, the beast changed into Fred. Covered in blood, Fred changed into another set of clothes and walked out of the changing room. He had not gone far when a woman walked into the same changing room and saw the choir master and his lover dead on the floor, naked. She raised an alarm, and people gathered, including Fred. Fred had to run to the scene like the others to avoid being suspected because some persons had seen him leaving. Fred was approached by a church member while he was standing with the crowd. "Were you here for the special prayer session?" the person asked Fred. Fred quickly lied that he was there for it but was tired and decided to go home and rest a little before daybreak. Being a generous member of their church, no one looked at him strangely except a woman. The woman was one of those who had earlier come to Fred's house. He was not even feeling well earlier. How did he get here? The woman thought silently. She quickly called Onome on the phone. "Your husband is in the church." "How come?" the woman said, sounding so scared. Onome ran to their room and saw that her husband was not there. She called back the woman and warned her. "Stop lying. My husband is here. How can you say you saw him at the church?" Onome lied and cut the call. Onome could feel that something was wrong. The woman became even more confused. However, Pastor Chucks survived, and the assistant pastor immediately announced to the church members, who were still praying for him, that he was responding to treatment at the hospital. But when this news was announced in the church, the beast inside Fred grew so angry and restless. He vowed to attack the pastor in the hospital that same night. "I must not leave a loophole," the beast thought. So, years ago, a man who was fond of forcing himself on people's wives was cursed by his village and forcefully drowned inside the river. But many years later, after civilization had taken over the area, the man's spirit was awakened by some youths who drowned their friend in that same river to cover up a crime. The man's spirit possessed one of them and turned him into a beast. When the man died, the beast left his body and returned to the river. Since then, it would turn into a beautiful woman to lure lustful men to himself and overpower their spirits. His only aim was revenge on human beings who caused and drowned him years ago. Fred, being the vessel the beast was using now, could not even fight him. The beast was too powerful. When Fred got home, his wife tried to know why he went to the church, but Fred took offense and started asking if it was a crime to go to church. Fred entered the bathroom to freshen up. He sat on the bathroom floor, crying and wondering what was happening to him. He was still crying when he lost consciousness and the beast took over. The beast ran to the hospital to kill Pastor Chucks. When he got there, he could smell Pastor Chucks from afar, so he walked straight into his ward. Immediately he stretched his hands to tear Pastor Chucks apart. 5 powerful men of God, who were hiding, suddenly came out, praying and calling down fire. The beast looked around in shock and saw them. It quickly turned into a python and dashed into the hospital's restroom. Once it connected with water, it would vanish. It headed for the toilet to jump in, but one of the men of God, who was holding a knife, stretched out his hand and cut off the tail of the python before it could disappear. At that very moment, Fred woke up in his bathroom with one of his legs cut off. Pastor Chucks knew the beast would come back to finish him, so he prepared for it. He invited his fellow powerful men of God. The pastors watched as the tail was struggling to enter the toilet along with the snake. "Put it inside something," one of them shouted. They trapped it and took it outside. "Set it on fire," one of the men of God suggested. When they lit the snake's tail, they could hear horrifying screams as it burned. "Open the door, Fred. You've been screaming." Onome's voice jolted Fred back to reality. Fred, whose leg was suddenly gone without a drop of blood anywhere, was in serious pain. "What is happening to me? How do I explain what is happening to me?" Fred cried. "Tomorrow is work. I can't go to work. I can't even stand up from here because my body seems not to belong to me anymore." After some minutes of pleading, Fred managed to open the door. By then, it was already morning. When Onome saw him without a leg, she screamed in fear and ran off. Fred knew his end was near if he didn't open up and fight back. He called his family to tell them his predicament. When his mother and younger brother arrived with Onome, who had run to them for refuge, Fred told them everything that has been happening to him over the past few days. He warned them that it was even dangerous to be around him because the beast could take over at any moment. His mother cried at the sight of her son with one leg. She told them they needed to visit the indigenous people of that river area and learn the full story surrounding the river. When they got there, they met a fisherman roasting fish by the riverbank. "We are looking for help, my son," Fred's mother began, pointing at Fred. The fisherman almost ran off immediately he saw Fred. "I don't want to get involved in Jacka's business. I've been a fisherman in this river for several years, and I see Jacka luring men into his trap all the time. I don't interfere in his business, and he doesn't interfere with mine. Everyone in this area knows that Jacka is a ruthless beast. I cannot help you," the fisherman said angrily. Fred's mother, in tears, asked again, "Who do you think can help us?" "No one can help you. Jacka doesn't take prisoners, he only kills ruthlessly. Your son is already a dead man. It's either Jacka manifests completely in him or he dies. So better stay out of Jacka's way, to avoid being burned together with your randy son," the fisherman replied, shooing them away from his stall. They were turning to leave when Fred suddenly fell and found himself inside the water. He started screaming for help. His younger brother wanted to jump in and save him, but the fisherman stopped him. "If you go in there, you're never leaving alive. I'm only advising you because I know you're not under his grip." While Onome and Fred's mother shouted for Fred to swim out, Fred kept crying to be saved, saying he was drowning. "He's not drowning. It's a trap. If you go in, You won't make it out alive, the fisherman warned. After a while, the water became still. Fred was nowhere to be found. His mother fell to the ground, crying. That was when all the other fishermen around gathered them. Leave now, while you can. Your son is gone, and you will never see him again. Leave, they told Fred's family. But as they made to leave, Fred suddenly came out of the water, coughing. His leg was no longer missing. The fishermen saw him and all ran off. Jacka has returned fully. Don't go with him, that's not your son, they screamed while fleeing. But Fred's mother and his wife ran to him, hugging him and welcoming him back. They all walked away, while the fishermen watched from afar, shaking their heads in fear. Once they left, Fred's mother sent a message to her pastor. We are coming to you now, my son is sick. Fred, who was smiling and pretending to be himself, was surprised to see his brother driving to their mother's church. Why are we going to the church? Let us go home, I am already fine. But his mother told him to relax, that they were only going there to greet her pastor. When they got there, they lured Fred into their prayer room and locked the door. Fred started shouting to be let out. After a while, he changed into the main beast. He growled and screamed. He tried everything possible to leave the room but could not. Hours later, he started crying and pleading for his mother to have mercy on him and save him. The beast tried everything possible to persuade and confuse Fred's mother, but failed. They all continued praying for him for hours. After almost 7 hours of prayers, everywhere fell silent. By then, it was almost evening. When they were no longer hearing the beast voice, Fred's mother started pleading for them to open the door and save her son. I think my son is in danger now, save him, but the pastors told her to have patience. We cannot let him out until we are sure he is powerless completely. So they did not unlock the door until the next morning. When they did, they saw Fred lying on the floor, barely breathing. They also saw a huge python lying next to him, looking dead. They drove Fred to the hospital where he suffered stroke and partial paralysis. He was in a coma for days. His own church members came to visit him, including his pastor. Only his pastor knew Fred was the beast. He told no one because he knew the beast was just using Fred to kill people, and it was not Fred doing it. Meanwhile, the python, even though it was weak, could not be killed. If they hit it, it will seem like they were hitting an iron rod. They had wanted to cut it into pieces before burying it to avoid the beast coming back. But the more they tried to kill it, the more difficult it became. So they decided to bury it like that. The first day they brought it out of where they had kept it, the python woke up and disappeared before their eyes. When it woke up was when Fred also woke up. The men of God were happy Fred was free, but they didn't like how the python disappeared. It means the world is not yet free from the bloodthirsty beast, one of the pastors said, frowning. Fred was discharged almost a month later. He came home on wheelchair as his legs were paralyzed. Onome left him after giving birth to their first and the only child Fred could have, since the paralysis affected his potency. She felt betrayed that Fred had robbed them of the ability to have more children due his womanizing lifestyle. Fred spent his life bound to a wheelchair and being catered for all the time. With the help of his family, he started a television show where he talks about life and self-control. He advised young men and women on the need to be in control of themselves at all times. When you have self-control over yourself, you have solved a huge percentage of the problems you might encounter as a man or a woman. The beast of waywardness is still out there. It gets to whoever does not have self-control. Not everyone that is dressed up is a human being, so don't be deceived.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.